All right, welcome back. The ban on Okadas in Lagos went into effect, I think, on June the 1st. I think 5 local governments of the states is where it's effective. And I've been joined by Siken Adirisu, Group Programs Director for the Beat FM, to talk about this and the effect it's going to have on the state. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Abuka.
What are your thoughts on that? Because it's been quite controversial.
Oh, very.
From the initial ban a couple of years ago, with ride-hailing services that were banned almost as quickly as they were commissioned.
Yeah, true.
And then this has come now, and there's a lot of conversations as to what effect it would have on things like crime, or even just how people commute in the States. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, back in the day when the first one happened and it was an Okada and a Keke ban, I was all out on Twitter, calling out the government and saying it made no sense because where I work on Kefi Street, people could not even properly commute from Obalinde all the way to the total filling station, which was a very short distance for people to work, and all of that. Then, over time, slowly, because they restricted them into inner roads, if you remember, then slowly they started coming back to the major roads. So I think one of the main issues in Nigeria or in Lagos per se is, okay, laws are put in place, then enforcing them now becomes a problem because there are constant loopholes and, there are people that are circumventing, these laws and these procedures. Then, a few weeks ago, we heard about the very ugly incident that happened in Lekki, and which was perpetrated by people who ride these Okadas. And I came all out and said, something has to be done because a group of people riding motorcycles cannot, take laws into their hands and start to lynch people. It makes no sense, and it happened in the heart of Lagos, an area which is said to be a very safe place. So the ban has gone into effect right now. We've started to see the ripple effect. A lot of people are trekking. The last mile buses are not even able to, meet up to the demand of the people who need to get from one place to the other. So I think the government now needs to now step back and say, okay, how do we solve this problem? One of the major problems, plaguing Lagos, aside the flooding, lack of accommodation, is, lack of a proper central transportation system. It's like, okay, the governor needs to figure out how do we get private cars off the road? How can we be able to effectively have a public transport system that can be able to get people from one point, to the other? And for a city like Lagos, it's the train system, which has been in, the red and the blue line since 2009. This conversation has been going on. Yes, we have been seeing infrastructure being laid, but it seems like it's going at snail speeds. We've seen this new president come in, and we've seen, of new rail lines, Abuja, Kaduna. So why is it that Lagos is taking so long to actually just get that right now? So crime is going to spiral. We understand people are going to start trekking. The hardship is going to increase. And it will all bring us back to the table as regards, okay, how do we solve this issue as regards, transporting people?
Speaking of how do we get, because the ride-hailing conversation was very, very shocking to a lot of people because the governor himself commissioned, a lot of these.
A bunch of them, yeah.
Is it time to have that conversation again? Where that's the middle ground. We can regulate the Okadas as against sending everybody away. Do you still think that was a wrong move? And do you think that's probably a way to sort of, pacify? Because trains are great, right? But trains are still going to take years.
Yeah.
And they're not going to go into every corner. You're still going to have to walk to the train stations.
And so how do you get there?
Yeah, so how do you get there?
When you get off the train, how do you get back home?
Exactly.
How do you get to your offices? Yeah. So ride-hailing services are a perfect way to be able to regulate, where you have a central database system that, not only holds information as regards the bikes, but biometrics for the people that are riding these bikes. And also, I believe that, bikes shouldn't be on major highways. Lekki Expressway, you're driving on Third Wayland Bridge, I've seen these guys there. Yeah. So bikes should be, restricted to little tiny roads and inner roads as well. But when you have, when you outsource it to ride-hailing companies where you understand that, okay, if there's an issue, you can go back and you can know that there's a central database that holds all this information, then that's an ideal, that's a possibility that needs to happen. So why they were banned in the first place is another, policy decision that I still, sincerely do not understand.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the other local governments where it hasn't been banned yet are worried.
Yeah.
Because you've pushed people here.
Yeah.
So
what's going to happen?
Also crime that might start happening in all of those places, Is a total ban even a part of the conversation? And we're seeing this happen in some other states. I think it was Oyo State, Kano State are all having those conversations now. Saying, okay, we're trying to... What then happens? Because nobody's talking about the alternative for these people who are actually legitimately working.
Oh, yeah, true. So I think, what we're seeing right now is a lack of a strong policy direction from, from the Lagos state government. We have a city of 20 million people. We need to be able to figure out how do we move these people. Then also we need to understand that, these are people who are trying as much as they can to come to Lagos to actually make, a source of income. So what we now need to do right now, like you rightly said, is to find a way to regulate them and also find a way to say, okay, these are the areas that you're applying. You go to cities like New York and you have something called the medallion taxes. So the medallion taxes are the taxes that go through the 5 boroughs of New York. So if you're not licensed to go to the 5 boroughs, you know that if you go there, you know what the consequences are. So we need to have policies in place and we need to be able to follow them strictly to the letter. So because when, the task force come and impounds these Okadas, what we now have is, people, a pity party of some sort that, oh, you're taking away their source of livelihoods. But we need to understand that for us to be able to have a state that we are all proud of, where transportation is seemingly working, we need to be able to abide by, rules that are laid down.
Are the kekes an option?
Oh, yes.
More kekes?
I'd say
they're a menace on the road.
Yeah, I know, because the road network in Lagos is atrocious at best. They're tiny for the amount of people that they are on. So what we now start to need, what the government needs to start to pivot towards is how do we get a lot of people into large means of transport that can be able to take people from one place to the other. Yeah, kekes, fantastic. Buses, yes. Trains also. Then, like when we saw ride-hailing services, we knew how it's relegated those yellow taxis that we had in Lagos because people had better alternatives. So when there are better alternatives as regards, okay, it's cheaper and it's more convenient and it's safer to be able to take public transport than take my personal car, then people will use it. Yeah. So what we need to see right now is like a proper master plan as regards how do we solve, the transportation system in Lagos. Then all the conversations around kekes and, Okadas will naturally just die out because if there's a bus or if there's a train service or if there's, Lagos is surrounded by water. You can literally get to every point in Lagos, using the lagoon or anything. Why are we not exploring it? Why are we not using it or anything? Yeah. So these are the conversations that we need to happen. So right now we are, in a very precarious situation. Hundreds, thousands of people thrown out of jobs. We know when a man gets hungry, he's pushed to the walls. Then we see crimes, spiral. So I'm hoping that the government also has a stopgap to make sure that these areas where bikes are no longer operating. What are we doing to make sure crimes do not step up? And the places where they are allowed to actually operate. What are we doing also to make sure that crime doesn't spike again? Because what we're having right now is that the government is more reactionary than actually getting in front of the problem. So before the young man was lynched in Lekki, what was the government doing as regards regulating the activities of the Okadas in Lagos?
So, very true. Yeah. On a final note now before we go, when the governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, ran for office, his agenda was called Teams, I believe. Yeah. Literally the first word there is transportation, which was, okay, maybe this is the one thing you want to tackle. It's almost 3 years plus now since he's been in office. How do you rate his time? Like you said, we've seen some work on the red line, I believe. A lot more work. It looks like something is happening there. But I know he also talks about the fact that, the water transportation is trying to explore that more. But generally, road networks, a lot of places are dark again, How do you think he's done with the first thing on his agenda? Well,
with transport, I drive in Lagos. It's tiring. There are no proper places to park. Parking has been outsourced to, private people, and I won't call them area boys. I'll just say people who are trying to make a living and everything. So I think that, we need stronger policies, and we need the governor rather, to be, firm as regards the things that he wants to do. We've seen him do, the trains that are coming from Milwaukee. We've seen a lot of work going on the train lines. But we need the work to actually speed up. You understand? Because once there's a proper transport system, you connect communities more. People can be able to plan better. You understand? So I think he needs to, put his foot down more and actually have a strong policy direction and timelines as regards, this is what I want to do. This is when I want.
Because Lagos is still growing.
Yes,
so you also have to plan for the future.
Yeah, so this is what I want to do, and this is when I plan to achieve. So once I knock off this, this policy direction, I can move on to all these things. But what I think right now is the governor should be thinking as regards how do I get Lagosians to leave their cars at home and use the public, the public and transportation system. In big cities like London or like Paris or like New York, you can't even afford to drive because it's cutthroat. roads, when you talk about, congestion charges, when you talk about parking fees or anything, it's easier to pay, $2 or $1 to actually just use the subway system or the PATH train, or, generally just hop on the bus. Yeah, it'll take you longer, but at the end of the day, it's going to save you time and actually bring your car into the city. A city like Lagos that is, spiraling with businesses and people and housing every day should be thinking in that direction as well.
Yeah.
How do we get people to keep their cars at home? How do we get more cars off the road? And how do we build, a public and a more effective and efficient transport system?
Well, I hope in all this politicking that's happening now, people are paying attention to
yes.
what really matters,
Yes.
because there's still a whole year to go.
Oh, yeah, 8
Of
months,
governance
I think. Yeah.
for the governor of Lagos.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
No problem.
for being here today. And thanks for joining us. Like I always say, you can follow the conversation on Twitter. Please use the hashtag #RobbieMinds when you send us a message. I'll see you next Sunday.